Years later, about a non-existent man, a total con job, playing the fake news media for fools, but they know it. The lawsuit claims the president's tweet falsely attacks the veracity of Stormy Daniels' story and falsely accuses her of a crime. It also claims, quote, Mr. Trump knew that his false, disparaging statement would be read by people around the world as well as widely reported, and that Ms. Clifford would be subjected to threats of violence, economic harm, and reputational damage. The lawsuit seeks at least $75,000 in damages. All right, joining us from Washington, Capitol Hill reporter for The Hill, Molly Hooper. Molly, good to talk to you once again. Let's talk about Senator Marco Rubio there first, joining the list of Republicans seeming to backpedal, of course, on the GOP tax cuts, which is pretty surprising, to say the least. What do you make of his latest comments on all of this?
Well, he is kind of backpedaling, but he's only backpedaling from his vote, because originally he was one of the concerns that leadership had in terms of whether he would actually support it, because he was skeptical as to whether the corporate tax cuts would really have big benefits for the economy. And as we're approaching the elections, we haven't seen necessarily as much money, perhaps, going back into the pockets of everyday Americans and the folks who want to get hired. That said, corporations, the argument, other Republicans who'd like to make that tax cut permanent, Republicans would say, the reason the corporations aren't investing as much is because they know that those tax breaks are going to expire in something like 10 years. So Congress needs to make it permanent. But it's unlikely to happen. And so is this push for an individual tax cut being made permanent. That's unlikely to happen this year as well.
So obviously we have the midterms come November. Do you think that if voters don't start to see some sort of hard impact on the tax system, on the economics, on the sort of the economy between now and then, do you think that's going to affect the midterm elections?
I think it's definitely going to factor into how they vote. And when you have something like almost 50 Republicans who in the House who've either resigned and or are running for other offices or are going to retire at the end of the year, that's a problem. I mean, if it's a difference between whether I have more money today in my pocket versus whether, hey, I'm going to get a job in a few months that I don't know exists yet, I'm probably going to vote the way of my pocketbook. And it's interesting because back when President Obama was in office and the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate, there was a big uproar about Obamacare and being anti-Obamacare, and we saw this Republican wave, and that was something that a lot of Republicans got behind. It's unclear, however, if the tax cuts are going to galvanize Democrats to vote against Republicans or even to get to the polls. But we do know that there's a lot of people that are motivated in the Democratic Party who are not happy with this president and with this administration. So we'll see, what does motivate them come Election Day.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how the GOP decides to spin things if, in fact, we don't see the results of these tax cuts come the midterm elections. They're going to have a lot of explaining to do, to say the least, to their voters. All right, Molly Hooper for us. Good seeing you, Molly. Thank you.